from pixel pushing to product purpose. Thank you very much, everyone, for coming. Thank you, John, Product Unleashed team, and of course, Wise for hosting. This wouldn't be the place if you hadn't come. So thanks. It's great to see you all. So why this talk? Why pixel pushing to product purpose? As John mentioned, I've been in design for quite a while. I have held many different roles, and in the last several years, I was embedded in quite deep engineering organizations. I feel like I'm missing my engineering person right now somewhere. Oh, show your hand. Oh, thanks. Good. Okay. Anyway, and in my experience, I ended up making two observations. I either held sort of a facilitator type of a role that would ask me to do all sorts of user research or facilitation, all hands on deck, strategy support. Or I was in an actual design role with a design title, and I would spend a lot of my day in some form of a pixel or illustration tool, Figma nowadays. I would, in those times, not that there's anything wrong with Figma or monkeys, but I would feel very much like just putting out pixels, hence the term pixel pushing. And as a result, I would then end up with this beautiful imagery, and I would have like, oh my gosh, this is so amazing. I even thought about the lighting and the background and texture and whatnot, and I would send it out into the world and hope for the best, and I would get something back like this. And I'd be like, what? That's not what I wanted. That's not what I expected. And at the same time, it was just a moment of misery, really. So really, this talk is about impact and how to face, or perhaps how to avoid some of these situations when you are sitting by yourself and you create a lot of beautiful visuals and you are hoping to actually achieve something else. So without further ado, some further ado, I do really want to take a moment and just clarify assumptions, because it's so easy to be quick on judgment these days. There's nothing wrong with Figma. Figma is great, and UI is a really rare, and from recent hiring experiences, a rare and beloved craft. If you do find yourself in a pixel pushing role and you're enjoying being in a pixel pushing role, then kudos to you. It is still still something that is really undervalued and often under practiced as well. So I also want to mention that, I make a big assumption here that we all understand that the experience of a product surpasses any types of boundaries of teams or feature squads. But it's a continuation of events within a sequence of a journey through a product. I also assume that product people want to build purposeful products, meaningful products. And last but not least, Andy will know this, I behold engineers very dear to my heart. I know engineers are craftspeople. They're trying their very, very best. And more often than not, I have seen engineers face something like this. They get a directive from top down. They're being told to go and do a quick discovery and then deliver. And they're often quite removed from context or understanding of why. And they get so late to the party that they often can't even influence anything. So their experience is very often similar to this. And it is not so much even about these elements of tiers, but really it's that downpour of a waterfall. And when you're at the bottom of a waterfall, if this waterfall has any sort of power at all, not only is it demoralizing in a work context because you feel you have very little impact or you have very little say, but also, as we all know, in person, in real life, if you go close to a waterfall and there is any strength behind it, you will likely get wet. There's no way to win. So let's have just a quick look on why this is happening. So product organization, any type of organization really, is trying to structure themselves around the delivery of work. That's the ideal. That's what they hope to do. And in an ideal world, you would have some form of categorization of different crafts and different qualities and different capabilities, and you would try to group these teams together and get them to understand the thin slice that moves one backlog piece through with velocity and actually deliver work that's meaningful by the end of the sprint. However, we all know the real world is not ideal. And this is not really how it always looks and feels like. And it doesn't really matter, whether you are quite young in your product transformation, whether you're quite new in terms of UX maturity levels. It doesn't matter whether you run Agile, Scrum, Lean, whatever you call it. Like, our toolbox of methodologies are really rich. And yet, after 25 years of Agile, we are still facing the same issue, which is organizations, when they come to want to do work, are facing this. It's chaos out there. And people are trying nothing else but control what that work looks like. And all these frameworks are trying to help break down this work, break down this uncertainty. And when you think about it, really, this makes a lot of sense, because the way that we build product is situated in a socio-technical context, which means there's an organization and a mechanism, an organism that comes together. The product itself is bigger than its parts. So it's not about the pixels. It's not about the data. It's all coming together. And only when it all comes together, the qualities of that experience becomes that product experience that leads to a purpose or an outcome. So in a way, you can forgive organizations trying to find mechanisms to want to control the work, who want to understand what they're actually doing, because it's very, very chaotic on the ground. And so really, when you think about it, we face this every single day. Organizations want to do something. Sometimes it's a regulation, sometimes it's a great idea, sometimes it's a known fact about a customer pain point. And they might have an idea of a future state. They might not have a very clear idea of the future state, but they want to get somewhere. And in order to get somewhere, they have to cross this bridge of this certain amount of uncertainty. And really, this is where, the quality of purpose becomes quite blurred, because the product delivery process is emergent, which means you cannot have perfect information when you start. When you set out in your delivery process, you have to prepare for yourself for the waterfall mechanism. If you think about, actually, that's a different slide. Let me bring this to life a little bit. So we'll come back to waterfalls. I wanted to stick with the theme of cars, or car insurance, actually, and share a little bit of an experience of a previous product I worked on. So in the UK, car insurance is pretty much a data product. So you enter a whole bunch of information, everything from where you live, your postcode, where you park your car, what your license reference number is, to how you use that car. So it's a really lengthy input experience, and we're actually going to look at this in a second. But let's just double check. What is the purpose of a car insurance? Anyone has any ideas? What's the purpose of a car insurance?
Take our money. I said take our money.
Take our money. Okay. Is the start? Take our money is the start. Okay. Anyone else?
Our incidents expenses. Cover incident expenses.
Covering expenses. Really, the purpose or the purpose of a car insurance is to promise to a customer, in the eventuality that there is some form of failure, they will be covered either with money or hassle, or some form of repercussions are being taken care of. That's the customer outcome, that purpose that we are after here. Now, keep that in mind, because I'm going to check on you in a bit on this. In order to get to being insured, though, you have to go through an experience of onboarding with a car insurance. So in this particular instance, this I do want to recognize here for a moment, this is a pretty outdated slide. At the time of the work, this was how this particular price comparison website looked like. And I'm aware that they have since rebranded, and I'm glad to say that some of the customer pain points have been eliminated. But what you see here is you have two different systems. So on the left, you have the price comparison website. And the way that it works, if you haven't bought car insurance before, is you enter all these points of information. And then you wait for which is like at this, so as a customer, you go through that journey, you enter all this information. Tile 11, the price comparison website spits out a price. And then when you have that price as a customer or potential customer, and you see what it offers you and you like it, you're then being handed over to the provider, at which point, actually, many of these data points have to be filled in again. And then, from a product design perspective, if you look at tile 4, which is what you see in this little video playing, is one of these extreme data point entry experiences of 26 different input fields that a customer has to go through. So this experience is a complete failure of integration of systems, and the onus is completely on the customer. And when we started looking at this product and this promise of this insurance, we started to see some customer behaviors that was really interesting. So first of all, car insurance policies don't last in average longer than 12 months, which means if you pay for car insurance, you have to go through this on an annual basis. And not only that, but the sad story is that most customers, because most customers have to go through this every year because insurances raise their premiums. And customers don't know, why? I haven't had an accident, I haven't moved house, I haven't bought a new car, so why are you raising premiums? And as a consequence, quite naturally, there was very little trust and a lot of pain. The cognitive overload of this data entry was just horrendous. And the amount of, it was quite literally degrading. And this has nothing to do with the actual price comparison website or the individual provider. This is industry standard. It's just really bad user experience. So the opportunity, of course, was and the other thing that we noticed was because people didn't trust any of the providers, really, they did a number of these data entry points trying to figure out why the price was changing. So they would, for example, change the position of where the car was parked, or they would change the number of people that would ride the car just to see if the price would change. And so you can imagine they would, it's not a joyful experience. They sit in the tube or somewhere in traffic and they play with these prices. It takes such a long time to do that because, it's not a quick data entry scenario. It was just ripe for innovation. If anyone wants to build a new startup, please have a look at it. Absolutely painful. Anyway, long story short, these price comparison websites work pretty much like an SEO problem. So, and car insurances are all sold through that platform, and that's pretty much your constraint, your starting point. So what we learned was in order to get customers insured and actually deliver on that promise that we will, the car insurance will actually take care of them, they really need to buy the car insurance first. So that's a premise to the experience. Unless you're actually insured, you can't be taken care of. And in order to get you insured, we have to get you to buy the product, or at least to notice the product. So we understood that conversion was number one key. So SEO, the first thing that you need to do is actually be seen. So the position of the listing was really, really important. In order to be listed up high, you needed to generate speed. And then as you all know from when Google still worked, it was not the first search result that you clicked on, but the thing that looked most interesting, and that was the ranking and the price. So these were our winning bets. Like we knew we had kind of a few categories that were really important in order to drive value to get people into the experience. Like first up, that then allowed us to articulate some architectural constraints. So this was really the tech that needed to be in place. And for us, we knew that was the pricing API. And the key to price was really all around, like, if these people have such a hard time to understand why price changes or how the price is put together, we had a value hypothesis saying that we can bring you transparency. We can allow you to actually see how this price is put together, and you are allowed to manipulate your data points while you're going through the journey. That was completely new to the industry. Like they didn't know what that would look like. But because we were able to articulate these hypotheses, these winning bets, we were able to then translate this into form factors in the UX. And it's not like the final product looked this way, but I just wanted to show you kind of the thinking behind this. It's like, we knew we wanted to have a composite of all the data that was going to be transferred from the aggregator into the actual provider, and the customer could see instantaneously, that's all my data. I don't have to re-enter it. So the bet there was very much on, hey, we can shorten these journeys tremendously because we're not asking people to re-enter all their information. And then the second thing that we wanted to do was very much around, like, can we actually show them how this price is put together? And they are allowed to change that in the course and duration of going through that process, which means like keeping the API open, recomposition that price, and adding or subtracting any additional cover that they wanted while they were going through the checkout. It just didn't exist. Like it did not exist in the industry. And then we did some iterations on that, and articulated and strengthened form factors and wanted to play. It was really important to us to always bring in that level of transparency and start to instill a sense of trust. And at that point, we were pretty much able to just run continuous discovery. Continuous discovery is also known as dual track Agile, or it was coined as dual track Agile. And the people that coined this term, Jeff Patton and Marty Kagan, I hope some product people here will recognize the name, were, after a while, they used a diagram that often showed these two different circles that kind of interlocked. But in the original diagram, it kind of was like dropping off. And what they noticed after a period of time was that people had associated with this diagram that discovery was happening in one lot of the team and delivery was somewhere else. But really, the whole point of dual track or the continuous discovery is about interlocking discovery at the point of delivery. So I'm going to come back to the waterfall metaphor just one more time. When you do end up going to visit one of the big waterfalls around the world, you will most likely come prepared with some form of rain gear, because people will tell you you're going to get wet. So really, in essence, the continuous discovery philosophy is all around, like, just be aware you will discover constraints and information that you don't know in advance. And that was really fantastic for our car insurance product, but we all know that it's not always so straightforward. So what I hope you can take away from this is, like, are you able to articulate and check yourself? Do you have a clear value hypothesis? Do other people in the team know about this? Does it even make sense to you? Like, is the value hypothesis clear? And then what are the form factors or the quality that can be articulated from that? And how do you translate that into an experience, into the UX? How is the opportunity framed? And can you partner with someone to move through that discovery delivery element? So ask your engineers, like, what do you need to know in order to build an API? I mean, you might not even know if it's an API, right? Like you just want to have that conversation around what will it take to build something like this. So you might be thinking, okay, well, dual track Agile sounds fantastic, and we should do a track. This is where the rain gear is really important, because you guys are all in the deep end. You've all had your pain experience around delivering products, and you all probably know the term growth mindset. Oh, hands. It's on every CV nowadays. Okay. But if you haven't, or like if you work in a product organization or in any organization, and you're not in the delivery department, or you need to figure something out that goes across different disciplines, you might not face necessarily a partner that has that growth mindset or rain gear in their pockets. So what I'm trying to show you now is literally just the bare bones of why product design pairing. Another Marty Kagan reference, the three-legged stool. I hope you've heard of that before. Show of hands. Yes, good. Okay, thank you. So in case you haven't, the three-legged stool stands for design, product, engineering. It's represented as a triad flipped on its head. So the three-legged stool is baselining the different disciplines and allowing for the different disciplines to come together, really. Often represented as a pyramid because it levels out the playing field. But what I really love about this triad philosophy is that it really gives you a perspective. And I can tell you very honestly, like, we wouldn't have been able to build our insurance product if we hadn't done discovery together. If we hadn't seen that pain point of customers trying to enter their information numerous times. And this is really the bare bone of what design pairing is about. It is perspective. Design pairing leans into pair programming. Who are our engineers here? No, yay. Know someone? Yay. Okay. So the whole point of anyone not familiar with pair programming, okay, just in case you're not familiar with pair programming, this is a philosophy that puts two engineers together and they sit over one machine to check on each other. And really the point there isn't about like, oh no, we have only one machine, therefore generating much less code. But really the point is that you have a second pair of eyes helping to create something of quality. And if we translate this over, it's like you have a second pair of eyes to help translate your ideas very early into a piece of artifact. And it can be crappy, it can be sticky notes. Artifacts are anything that can start to document. And this is the beauty of like old types of wireframes or paper wireframes. It's because you're codifying this difference from, we're starting here, we have some form of end state, and we know a little bit of stuff that we don't know, and we know at least the context. It has something to do with cars, apparently. So then it is all around, like, you start going through build, measure, learn. So you know something, you know that you don't know many things, but you can have that second pair of eyes that helps you articulate that creation of feedback. And this is really that thing, you know, like you put something out, you get feedback very, very early. And you can do that with anyone in any organization. It doesn't have to be a designer or a developer or anything else. It's literally just like, who can I pair with to put something into an artifact? And then when you have it in an artifact, you can gather data, you can get more feedback, you gather more constraints, like is it more real or less real? And then in the middle, you have that squishy middle bit, what we call synthesis, by the way, this is the magic word for all designers in this room. This is what you're especially good at. Synthesis is about making sense of this squishy middle bit where you have some information and you have some not existing information, but making sense of it and using the means of storytelling to bring some form of coherence into that concept. And you can iterate over that as well. And then hopefully you're moving from an initial artifact, like something that was perhaps a simple sticky note, towards triangulation, propelling yourself forward between data and constraints to a desired outcome. That's the whole point of product design pair. Now that you all have heard a little bit of concept around product design pairing, is really a framing method or a framing tool to get you started from where you are, even if you don't really know the desired end state and you have a very loose idea of the current state of the idea. Product purpose is all about where do you want to go? What's the desired direction and where do you want to end up? So really this is like looking at that end state that you want to get to after bridging that gap of lots of uncertainty. So one person could perhaps say, actually the product purpose is, no, it's just a digital product. That's why we're all here and that's what we're doing. But as we mentioned earlier, and I think most people that have worked in product will all know product is more than just its parts. You know, like we build screens, we build APIs, and we're able to move data around. But the product only makes sense when it's used. And this is really that emergent property. So mapping purpose, we already spoke about customer outcome. So this promise of insurance sits after the end state. So we build a bunch of stuff. So we build a bunch of stuff. Customer gets the promise of car insurance. But we build a bunch of stuff, and there's also a business outcome. And in order to build a bunch of stuff, we have to have output, which is our work, which is what is so uncertain, which creates all this chaos all the time. And in order to get to that work, we have to do some form of output, like artifacts, like putting our craft to use. And that you can start with pairing tomorrow, hopefully. So what I want to just mention here is that you have this line of product because it's emergent. You can't really contain it into just one thing. If you want to take like one thing away from this conversation tonight, like product is so freaking indirect. It's why we need all this data points and triangulation and ways to reflect. Everything that we do has an effect somewhere else. And I hope Chris will talk a little bit about system emergence and the dynamics in a minute. But let's talk very briefly about the business outcome. Actually, first, let's start talking about the end state. The end state, someone said it earlier, money, someone else said it. So here's the thing, right? Like, yes, there's a customer promise. The customer promise is like, we take care of you. But the real thing is nothing but a bunch of documents. You can't get to the documents unless you have a pricing engine, an API, something that calculates the risk, translates all that into a price, and then sells you a piece of data. So that's what it boils down to. But that's not the purpose. That's just the end state capability that actually gets you to sell the product. And this is why this is so confusing at times, because there's a difference between the end state and the outcome. The outcome is money and a capability. Boom, we can actually calculate a price. It's amazing. We can sell paper that tells us that if something happens, we need to take care of you, which they try to avoid, of course. And so let's talk about just the two other parts of this mapping product purpose. This is what we need to do to get to our desired end state. So in order to sell paper, we have to put all sorts of a pricing engine in place. We have to know who our customers are. We have to verify them. We have to build an auth API. Like there's all these building blocks that actually build up to that desired end state. But in order to get to that work, we all have to bring our craft in how we actually shape this work, in how we design this work. And that's working backwards before. And that, again, you can start with pairing tomorrow. So, last couple of slides. Ask yourself, do you know the desired end state? And it's really decoupled from product purpose and outcome. It's just a functionality, it's a capability that enables someone else to do something that leads to an outcome. So you can check yourself against that. What is the product? What is the output? What is the output? What is the artifact? What can you iterate over? And most importantly is like, who can you pair with? And it really doesn't matter like who it is, because it will be a starting point for a second pair of eyes to help you get and articulate feedback. And that's it. My recommendation, try to pair it into at least 2 different directions. So, triad, so 6 eyes. Frame the opportunity with form factors, like ask others to help you articulate, what is that? Triangulate with discovery, artifacts and iteration, differentiate the different states. And then most importantly, of course, close the gap, this squishy middle bit, with synthesis and storytelling. And that's it. Thank you so much for your attention.